During the Second World War, a frail carrier pigeon is given the mission of delivering an extremely important message that will drastically change the fate of every country in the world. Today we're going to recap the story of the 2005 movie, Valiant. In May 1944, while crossing the English Channel, a group of carrier pigeons is attacked and captured by a bloodthirsty hawk. A few days later, a bird goes to inform Commander Gutsy of what has happened and reports that none of the messengers have been found alive. When he hears this, the commander is surprised, as those pigeons were the best in his group, and comes to the conclusion that if he doesn't find more fast birds, his team will be annihilated. Since the beginning of the Second World War, pigeons have been hard at work in the fight for freedom, delivering top-secret messages to the Allied countries. Members of the Royal Mail Pigeon Service take to the front during battles and cross enemy lines to fulfill their mission, risking their lives to ensure that messages and war strategies are successfully delivered. In addition to the messengers, there are also the doves who play the vital role of collecting seeds to supply the troops and the nurses who ensure that the messengers receive all the care they need. To be accepted as a recruit, the pigeon needs to pass a careful evaluation, as the vacancies are always allocated to the birds with the greatest physical fitness. Valiant is a little pigeon who dreams of joining the royal service and tells his friend Felix that one day he will become a very prestigious recruit. Despite knowing that Valiant has little chance of getting a chance, the seagull encourages him to follow his dream. That day, they receive an illustrious visit from Commander Gutsy and his team, who come into the bar for a drink. Valiant realizes that this is his chance. The pigeon asks where he can join the military and is ridiculed by everyone around him. Because he is small and weak, no one believes that he will be accepted into the Royal Carrier Pigeon Service, but Valiant refuses to give up on his goal. Seeing the determination in the animal's eyes, the commander informs him that enlistment will take place in London the following day and says that everyone has the right to take part in the selection. Then the war heroes leave and Valiant sets off on a long journey. Meanwhile, at a military base near the English Channel, General von Talon orders his prisoner to be put in a cage and intends to interrogate him to obtain war information. The next morning, Valiant says goodbye to his mother and informs her that he is going to enlist to become a carrier pigeon. Elsa tries to stop him, as she is worried about what might happen to the little one, but the pigeon is determined to follow his dream and says goodbye to his mother, leaving her heart in pieces. Before leaving, the pigeon says goodbye to Felix and the seagull wishes him luck. After a few hours on the path, the animal arrives in London, where Bugsy lives, a trickster pigeon who scams other birds to get crumbs. However, this time he is discovered and is about to be attacked when Valiant appears and accidentally falls on his victims. The pigeon informs him that he has gone to the city to join the Royal Mail Pigeon Service and, in order to escape from the clutches of the birds he has tricked, Bugsy decides to accompany him to the military base. When they get there, the officer says that the pair are not fit for the job of carrier pigeon, but changes his mind when Valiant says that he was sent by Commander Gutsy. After signing the letter of enlistment, the pigeons join the other recruits and, when he realizes that he is not being chased anymore, Bugsy bids the youngsters farewell and leaves. However, before he could get out of his cage, the door slams shut and the pigeon despairs when he realizes that he will be forced to serve in the army. The group is transported on a motorcycle to the training center and soon meets their new teammates. Tailfeather and Toughwood are two brothers who are not very bright, but who have impressive strength. Lofty, on the other hand, is the opposite extreme and is a rather intellectual pigeon with little physical ability. Minutes later, Sergeant Monty appears to welcome the newcomers and tells them that they will undergo 6 weeks of intense training before being sent on a mission. Trapped in the enemy's hideout, Mercury is tortured into giving information about his mission and forced to listen to terribly bad music for several hours, which leaves him completely unhinged. When he realizes that no amount of torture will be enough to get him to open his mouth, General von Talon orders his henchmen to bring him the truth serum. After a few hours of taking the substance, Mercury begins to chatter and accidentally reveals secret information to his enemy. After doing countless push-ups and doing several laps of the field, the recruits are discharged and Sergeant Monty orders them to report to the infirmary. Once there, they meet Victoria and Valiant gets his first vaccine. Bugsy tries to sneak out, but is dragged back and forced to face his worst nightmare. However, right after his bath, he finds a way to get dirty again. Next, the team is introduced to the barracks menu and their feathers are trimmed to receive their uniforms. Finally, the pigeons are shown to their dormitory, which is more like a garbage dump, where they will spend every night for a month and a half. The next morning, minutes after sunrise, Monty rapidly wake up his team for another day of training. During a flight test, Valiant has an accident and Bugsy has to take him to the infirmary. Victoria then begins to worry about the animal's health, as this is the third time that week that she has been visited by him. After having his foot bandaged, the pigeon intends to return to training, but ends up having another accident. In the second week of training, the sergeant has to warn the recruits about the challenges they will face during their journeys. In addition to storms and bombs exploding everywhere, the pigeons have to be very careful not to be preyed upon by the hawks. The birds are 5 times larger than the messengers and surprise their prey by reaching over 300 km per hour in one swift attack. After frightening the recruits, Monty trains his team to recognize these cruel enemies at night. The following training sessions aim to build up the strength of the pigeons, who need to be in shape to be able to carry the capsule with the message. They also need to be fast enough to fly quickly through the war zone and have the agility to dodge enemy attacks. Another necessary skill is to have the stamina to face bad weather and fly long distances over the ocean, with nowhere to land to rest. A few weeks after the start of training, Commander Gutsy shows up at the base for a visit and informs them that he has lost a platoon in Belgium. So these recruits are the only hope. Monty says they're not ready yet, but the trip is scheduled for the following day and no other team is available to carry out the mission. As usual, Valiant gets injured during training and has to go to the infirmary. He tells her that he will be leaving soon for his first mission and Victoria asks him to be careful because she wants to see him again. During the farewell, the sergeant gives a speech with the aim of inspiring his team and encouraging them to face the challenges that lie ahead. From now on, they will be Commander Gutsy's support platoon and must do whatever it takes to ensure the success of his mission. At that moment, the commander appears and informs them that this is the most important task he has ever received and its success could define the fate of the war. At his last meal before the trip, Bugsy takes the opportunity to eat as many crumbs as possible and tries to convince Monty to leave him out of the mission. However, the sergeant says that the pigeon needs to do his duty, so Bugsy decides to sneak out at night. Before leaving, he is caught by Valiant and says that he will go back to the little square where they met, because he wants his freedom back. After saying goodbye to his friend, the pigeon trips over a can of sardines and wakes up the rest of the team. Despite feeling ashamed of his decision, Bugsy doesn't change his mind and bids farewell to the members of his group, wishing them good luck. In the morning, the quartet prepares to fly to France to pick up a top-secret message to be delivered to the British Army. So the battalion gets on the plane to their destination. Just as the gates were about to close, Bugsy appears and Valiant is overjoyed to see him. As the plane takes off, Victoria can't hide her dissatisfaction and wonders if she'll ever be able to meet Valiant again. During the flight, the little pigeon thanks his friend for coming back and Bugsy says that this was the first decent thing he had done in his life. The plane is flying over a war zone and is bombed, so the birds will have to leave it and their cages won't be thrown through the emergency gate. After helping his companions escape, Commander Gutsy tries to free his cage, but the chain is jammed and he can't escape. At this point, Valiant feels worried about his captain, especially when he sees the aircraft being completely destroyed and exploding in midair. Minutes later, the group lands on dry land and Lofty celebrates the fact that everyone is alive. Then Valiant delivers the sad news that the captain was unable to jump and exploded along with the plane. Now that they are alone, the recruits need to come up with a new plan and Valiant suggests that they find a safe place to define their next steps. By majority vote, the young pigeon is chosen to break into the hideout and check if there is any danger inside. Then the pigeons also invade the place and Tailfeather gets his body stuck in a golden chalice, but manages to get out unharmed when everyone comes together to help him. Just as he manages to save his friend, the team is surprised by a duo who introduce themselves as members of the Army's rat division. Charles, the rodent, claims to have seen the plane crash and decided to go there with her friend, Rollo, to help them save their country. The mice have to lead the group to the place where the message is hidden, but the route there is guarded by the hawks. So they have to be very careful. So the pigeons follow Charles, walking on the ground, and are taken to a hiding place in the sewer. After going through the tunnel, they reach the place where the message is hidden and Lofty carries the rodent through the air while the two pigeon brothers carry Rollo. Seeing the birds trying to reach their destination, the pair of hawks begin to chase them and Charles helps the pigeons get rid of their enemies in flight. When she arrives at the cafe, the rat tells Jacques the secret password and, in this way, manages to help her friends get into the attic before they are devoured by the birds of prey. The old rodent then hands her the manuscript and Charles says that the message must reach London at any cost, as the future of the war and millions of people depend on it. Everyone is afraid to take on this responsibility, so Bugsy decides to put the manuscript in his capsule. To increase the mission's chances of success, the group splits up and outwits the hawks while Bugsy and Valiant manage to escape unnoticed. The plan seems to be a success until, suddenly, one of the hawks realizes the ruse and goes after them. At this point, the young pigeon has to improvise and lures the predator into a tangle of thorns. Cufflink gets stuck, but soon manages to break free and captures Valiant. However, Bugsy attacks the animal to save his friend and the little pigeon ends up falling into the thorns. As he tries to break free, Bugsy is captured and taken to the enemy military base. Valiant tries to catch up with them, but as he approaches the site, all the gates close and the animal is locked out. Cufflink then takes the prisoner to his master and gives the message to General von Talon, who can't wait to deliver the manuscript to his German commander. The Hawk then orders his henchmen to put the prisoner in the cell with Mercury, who is already completely out of his mind. Disappointed at not being able to save his friend, Valiant is about to give up everything when the rest of his team finds him. The Pigeon is relieved to know that they are alive and is even more surprised when Gutsy shows up. The captain explains that after the aircraft exploded, his parachute didn't open and he plummeted 1,000 meters. After that, he was attacked by wolves and flew through barbed wire until he finally managed to find his group. Just then, Valiant breaks the terrible news to his friends and informs them that the Hawks have captured Bugsy and taken the message. Immediately, Commander Gutsy says he will sneak into the enemy base to retrieve the manuscript and asks his companions to wait for him outside. Before delivering the message to his captain, General von Talon goes to take a shower and orders his henchmen to get his best cloak. After reconnoitering the area, Gutsy realizes that the enemy's fortress is practically impenetrable and returns to ask for the help of his support team. The only way in is through the barrel of the cannon, but only a hummingbird would be small enough to get through. When he hears this, Valiant decides to take a chance, because this is the first time the little guy will be able to use his diminutive size to his advantage. After removing his equipment to enter the hideout, he spots the cage where his allies were being held and finds only their remains. Still hopeful, Valiant continues his search and, fortunately, discovers that Bugsy is alive in another cage. The bird helps his friend retrieve the message and the pigeon is shocked to see countless stuffed pigeons being used as a bizarre decoration. After taking the manuscript, Valiant decides to swallow it to make sure it won't be stolen again and promises to free his friend. However, Bugsy advises him to carry out his mission and forget about him, as von Talon has the key to his cage. Contrary to the pigeon's advice, Valiant flies straight to the bathroom and, while the Hawk is taking his bath, he takes the opportunity to steal the key. Mistaken for Cufflink, the pigeon gives the brush to the enemy general and manages to prevent his true identity from being discovered. However, just as he is about to get the key, the two henchmen appear and walk towards him, only to be knocked down by bullets falling on their heads. After opening the cage, Valiant guides the captive pigeons out of the enemy fortress and the trio meet up with the rest of the group. Now that everyone is safe, they start a flight home, but end up being chased by hawks. Immediately, the pigeons start an attack formation to distract the enemies while Valiant has the chance to escape to complete the mission. However, when he least expects it, General von Talon appears and notices the little bird's escape. So he decides to go after it. In an attempt to outwit the enemy, Valiant tries to hide in a ship and manages to escape through the fog unnoticed. When he arrives on dry land, he realizes that the hawk is still on his tail and, once again, manages to escape when he crosses a bridge with a freight train. The pigeon makes its way over a lake and its predator soon finds it. Luckily, he's in his hometown and, on seeing the hawk, Felix sounds an alarm. Valiant uses his knowledge of the area to his advantage and manages to hide in an abandoned house. While chasing the animal, von Talon ends up getting his claws caught in a wooden beam and, while trying to free himself, is attacked by the local bird population. With the aim of confusing the enemy and diverting his attention, Valiant activates the windmill and manages to lure his enemy into a trap. The pigeon manages to capture him and heads to London to deliver the secret message to Sergeant Monty, who is surprised to realize that the weakest soldier in his platoon has made it back from the mission alive. Valiant then hands the manuscript to his superior and then collapses from exhaustion. When the British Army received the message sent by their French allies, a new strategy was adopted, handing victory in the Second World War to the Allied countries. After his incredible act of bravery, Valiant is promoted and all his friends receive merit badges for their outstanding contribution to the fight for freedom. After that memorable day, the young pigeon becomes a famous war hero and wins the respect of all the residents of his town, as well as the hearts of all the doves in the area. However, Victoria is the only bird the pigeon is interested in and the couple can finally live out their love story, which began when Valiant was just a recruit. During the Second World War, animals saved thousands of lives, but only a few of them had their bravery recognized through the Dickon Medal, the highest award given to animals. Of the 54 Dickon Medals awarded during the war, 18 went to dogs, 3 to horses, 1 to a cat and 32 to pigeons, making these birds the greatest heroes in history. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.